The firing range fell silent as the instructor's smirk disappeared. His words still hung in the air. Only alpha males shoot that clean. But the janitor, the woman everyone overlooked each day, had just fired a shot that shattered his record. The men stared at the impossible bullseye, then back at her, their expressions shifting from mockery to disbelief. What they didn't know was that her fingerprints weren't in any civilian database for a reason. And the security camera, blinking in the corner, had just sent an alert to people who'd been hunting her for years. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about hidden talents and unexpected heroes, consider subscribing for more. In the early morning hours at Precision Point, firing range, dust motes drifted through shafts of sunlight, streaming through high windows. The facility smelled of gun oil, brass, and industrial cleaner. Aurelia Frost moved methodically between shooting lanes, wiping down surfaces with practiced efficiency. Her gray janitor's uniform hung loosely on her frame, the name patch reading simply A. Frost in faded thread. She kept her dark hair pulled back severely, her face bare of makeup, her movements designed to attract minimal attention. The heavy front doors swung open with a metallic groan. Aurelia didn't need to look up to know who had arrived. The heavy footfalls and boisterous voice of Dominic Thorne, the range's head instructor, echoed through the cavernous space. His voice carried an edge of superiority that seemed to physically fill the room before he did. "Gentlemen, welcome to the best damn shooting facility in the country," Dominic announced to the group of 6 military liaisons following behind him like ducklings. His chest puffed out beneath his tactical shirt, which strained slightly over his middle-aged paunch. "I've personally trained Navy SEALs, Delta, you name it. If it goes bang and needs precision, I'm your man." The military men nodded appreciatively, scanning the professional facility with approval. Near the entrance, a gleaming plaque displayed Dominic's record, 97.8% accuracy at 800 yards. The date beneath it showed the record had stood for nearly a decade. As Dominic led the group through his orientation spiel, Aurelia continued her work, moving invisibly around the periphery of the room. When her cart bumped against a trash can, causing a minor clatter during Dominic's explanation of the facility's custom-built targeting system, he shot her a withering glare. "Sorry about our maintenance staff," he said loudly enough for her to hear. "Hard to find good help these days, especially those who understand that silence is golden in a precision environment." The men chuckled, and Aurelia kept her eyes fixed on her work, her face a mask of neutrality. But anyone watching closely might have noticed her hands gripping the mop handle with slightly more force than necessary. "Let's get you gentlemen set up," Dominic continued, guiding them toward the premium lanes. Today's session is about advanced windage compensation techniques, critical for field operators in variable conditions. For the next 2 hours, Dominic demonstrated firing techniques with theatrical flourish. The military liaisons took turns, with varying degrees of success. Dominic's critiques were harsh, often unnecessarily personal, and peppered with casual sexism that made Aurelia's jaw tighten as she worked. "That grip's looser than my ex-wife's morals," he barked at one unfortunate shooter, whose grouping scattered widely across the target. "Tighten up, or you might as well be throwing rocks." One of the liaisons, a lean man with quiet intensity whom the others addressed as Lieutenant Nash, performed notably better than his peers. His form was textbook perfect, his breathing controlled, his shots landing in tight clusters. When Nash completed his round, Dominic clapped him heartily on the shoulder. "Now, that's what I call alpha male shooting. Clean, precise, no hesitation. The kind of shooting that separates the operators from the observers." Nash nodded politely but seemed uncomfortable with the praise, especially its framing. His eyes briefly met Aurelia's before she looked away, resuming her task of collecting spent brass from a nearby lane. As the morning session wound down, Dominic announced they would break for lunch after one final demonstration. Aurelia moved to clean brass from an adjacent lane, methodically collecting the spent casings. She paused momentarily, studying Lieutenant Nash's target pattern through narrowed eyes. Something shifted in her posture. A nearly imperceptible change, a momentary assessment that would have been invisible to most observers. But Dominic noticed. His instructor's eyes, trained to catch the smallest details of shooting form, caught the micro-expression that crossed her face. "Something interesting, Aurelia?" he called out, his voice dripping with condescension. Perhaps you'd like to share your expert opinion on the lieutenant's grouping with our distinguished guests? The room fell quiet. 6 pairs of military eyes turned toward her, most wearing smirks similar to Dominic's. Aurelia spoke softly, her accent faintly Eastern European. The wind shifted at 11:42. His last 3 shots compensated well. The silence deepened. Dominic's eyebrows shot up, then lowered into a frown. He glanced at his watch, then back at her. "Well, well," he said, walking toward her with exaggerated steps. "Our janitor thinks she's a ballistics expert. Been studying our techniques while mopping the floors, have you?" He looked at his watch again, making a show of it. "It's almost lunch. Why don't you show us what you know before we break? Educational purposes, of course." His smile didn't reach his eyes. The challenge hung in the air like gunpowder residue, acrid and inescapable. Aurelia's eyes darted to the exit door, where a security camera blinked red, its tiny light reflecting in her dark irises. She hesitated, tension evident in the slight tightening of her shoulders. "I'm just here to clean," she said quietly, turning back to her cart. "Nonsense," Dominic insisted, moving to physically block her retreat. He gestured toward the firing line with mock courtesy. "I insist. How often do our custodial staff get a chance to demonstrate their observational learning? I'm a big believer in workplace development opportunities." The military men formed a loose half-circle, clearly amused by the spectacle. Lieutenant Nash alone looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, but saying nothing to intervene. Dominic selected his personal rifle from a locked case behind the counter. A high-end tactical model, with custom modifications that probably cost more than Aurelia's yearly salary. He held it out to her like someone offering a complicated tool to a child. "Ever handled one of these before?" he asked, his tone making it clear he expected the answer to be no. Aurelia took the weapon, and something subtle changed in her grip, a shift too practiced to be coincidental. Her fingers found their positions with unconscious precision. The change was subtle, easy to miss, but Lieutenant Nash's expression changed as he watched her. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Sir," Nash began, "maybe we should—" "Let the lady try," Dominic interrupted, waving away Nash's concern. "Everybody starts somewhere. This is a teaching facility, after all." Aurelia checked the chamber methodically, adjusted the scope with practiced precision. These movements contradicted her earlier hesitation. Muscle memory, betraying careful restraint. Nash watched her with growing intensity, his brow furrowed. Dominic set up a target at 600 yards, an almost impossible shot for an amateur, especially with an unfamiliar weapon. The electronic targeting system hummed as it positioned the silhouette downrange. "Take your time," Dominic said, not bothering to hide his patronizing tone. "Just try to hit the paper. That would be achievement enough for someone's first time." As Aurelia took position at the firing line, whispers circulated among the military men. One of them pulled out his wallet. $10 says she flinches before firing," he murmured to his companion. Another chuckled. 20 says she misses the entire target. Lieutenant Nash remained silent, studying her form with an intensity that seemed out of proportion to the moment. His eyes narrowed as Aurelia settled into a shooting stance that appeared simultaneously unpracticed, yet fundamentally sound. She inhaled deeply, exhaled halfway, and froze perfectly still. She fired a single shot. The crack of the rifle echoed through the range, and for a moment, no one moved. Dominic already had a smirk forming on his lips as he reached for the control panel to retrieve the target results. The screen displayed a perfect bullseye. Silence descended upon the room. Dominic's smile faltered, then disappeared entirely. He squinted at the screen as if he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Try again." Without hesitation, Aurelia fired 3 more shots in rapid succession. The screen updated in real time, showing all 3 bullets had hit the bullseye, forming a tight cluster that could be covered by a dime. One of the military men whispered, "That's impossible." Lieutenant Nash stepped forward, examining the digital readout intently. "Sir, those are perfect shots, 4 for 4, center mass." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as everyone stared at the unassuming janitor holding Dominic's prized rifle. Dominic's face had reddened to a dangerous shade, humiliation radiating from him in almost visible waves. The wind must have died down, he said flatly, jabbing at the control panel with more force than necessary. Let's try something more challenging. The target moved back to 800 yards, the exact distance of his record shot, the very record immortalized on the plaque by the entrance. As Aurelia prepared for the next shot, Lieutenant Nash discreetly removed his phone from his pocket. He stepped slightly away from the group, typing rapidly on the screen, occasionally glancing up at Aurelia with an expression of deepening suspicion. Dominic noticed Nash's behavior and frowned. "Problem, Lieutenant?" "No, sir," Nash replied smoothly, tucking the phone away. "Just documenting the session, for training purposes." Aurelia's eyes flicked momentarily to Nash, then back to the scope. She adjusted for the new distance with quick, practiced movements that seemed increasingly at odds with her cover identity. As she settled into position, her finger hovered over the trigger. For a fraction of a second, something flashed behind her eyes. A memory, perhaps. Her breathing hitched almost imperceptibly before returning to its measured rhythm. She fired 5 shots in sequence, each one perfectly timed between heartbeats. When they checked the target display, collective gasps filled the room. The shots formed a perfect pentagon pattern around the bullseye, each bullet equidistant from the center and from each other. It wasn't just accurate shooting, it was mathematical precision that verged on impossible. Dominic's swagger had completely evaporated. "How did you—" "I clean up after thousands of shooters," Aurelia said softly, lowering the rifle. "I watch, I learn." One of the military men laughed nervously, the sound echoing in the tense silence. "Maybe we should hire the janitor to train us instead." The joke fell flat as Lieutenant Nash returned to the group, his expression grim. He showed something on his phone to one of his colleagues, who looked up at Aurelia with widened eyes and a slight shake of his head. Dominic, desperate to regain control of the situation, pushed several buttons on the control panel. "Final challenge," he announced, his voice strained. "Obscured target at 1,000 yards with simulated wind conditions. No one hits this consistently, not even me." As Aurelia took position once again, Nash quietly approached Dominic, leaning in to whisper something in his ear. As Nash spoke, Dominic's face transformed from annoyance to shock as he stared first at Nash's phone screen, then at Aurelia with new eyes. "That's not possible," Dominic hissed. "She's dead." Aurelia, whose hearing seemed remarkably acute, tensed at these words. Without taking another shot, she carefully placed the rifle down on the shooting bench. "I should get back to work," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "My break isn't scheduled for another hour." As she turned to leave, Lieutenant Nash stepped forward, blocking her path. "Excuse me, ma'am? Could I ask where you served?" The room fell silent once more, the tension ratcheting up to an almost unbearable level. "I clean bathrooms," she responded flatly. "I've never served." Nash pressed on, undeterred. "Strange. You have the exact shooting form taught in the Ghost protocol in 2016. Very distinctive technique. The way you adjust your breathing before the 5th shot, the finger positioning on, follow through. Only 30 operators worldwide were trained in that method." Aurelia's expression remained carefully neutral, but her posture shifted imperceptibly, coiled tension now evident to anyone trained to recognize combative readiness. Dominic looked between them, confusion warring with dawning comprehension on his face. "What are you suggesting, Lieutenant?" Instead of answering directly, Nash held up his phone so everyone could see the screen. On it, a classified military document with a grainy photograph that bore a striking resemblance to Aurelia, alongside the codename Shade. The other military personnel crowded closer, murmuring among themselves as they compared the image to the woman standing before them. "Who are you really?" Nash asked quietly, his voice lacking the accusation one might expect, replaced instead with something like respectful curiosity. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound in the room was the soft hum of the ventilation system and the distant tick of the wall clock. The red light on the security camera blinked steadily, watching, waiting. Have you ever wondered about the hidden talents of people you pass by every day? The janitor who cleans your office, the barista who makes your coffee, the stranger on the subway? Sometimes the most extraordinary abilities hide in plain sight, cloaked in ordinary appearances. If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more tales of unexpected heroes and hidden pasts. Dominic cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. His face had transitioned from embarrassment to something more calculating as he studied Aurelia with new eyes. "I think we've had enough demonstration for one day," he said, his voice artificially light. "Let's reset for the afternoon session." But Lieutenant Nash didn't move, his phone still displaying the classified document. "This image is from Operation Blackstone, 4 years ago. Captain Aurelia Frost, call sign Shade. Special Forces Ghost Team Epsilon." His voice dropped lower. "Officially listed as KIA." The other military liaisons exchanged glances, their earlier amusement replaced with wary assessment. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a close-cropped beard, subtly shifted his stance to block the nearest exit. Aurelia's eyes tracked the movement. Something cold and calculating flickered behind her gaze, there, then gone in an instant. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. "I'm just maintenance staff. This is a misunderstanding." Dominic moved toward the rifle she had placed on the bench. "I don't think so. No janitor shoots like that." He picked up the weapon, holding it at a non-threatening angle, but clearly ready. "Lieutenant, are you certain about this identification?" Before Nash could answer, a sharp electronic tone cut through the tension. The red security camera in the corner was now blinking rapidly, and a mechanical voice announced through overhead speakers, "Security breach. Facility lockdown initiated." Heavy metal shutters began descending over the windows and exit doors with pneumatic hisses. The main entrance doors automatically sealed with an ominous thud. Within seconds, the firing range had transformed from an open training facility to a secured containment area. "What's happening?" Dominic demanded, his head swiveling between the sealed exits and Aurelia. Nash looked down at his phone in confusion. "I just sent an image query through the military database, standard procedure for potential identification." His brow furrowed. The system must have flagged something high priority. The bearded military liaison reached beneath his jacket. Aurelia's eyes locked onto the movement instantly. "I wouldn't," she said, her voice now entirely different, lower, commanding, with the full weight of authority behind it. Gone was any trace of the deferential janitor. "Not unless you want to explain to your superiors why you drew a weapon on a U.S. military officer." The man froze, his hand still beneath his jacket. Nash stepped forward cautiously. "If you are who I think you are, ma'am, there are a lot of people who would be very relieved to know you're alive. And others who would prefer I stayed dead," Aurelia countered, her posture still relaxed but somehow more present, as if she had fully materialized into the room for the first time. Dominic's knuckles whitened around the rifle. "Someone better start explaining what's going on in my facility." "Your facility is now under temporary military jurisdiction," came a new voice from the direction of the administration offices. Everyone turned to see a man in a crisp black suit standing in the doorway, flanked by 2 armed security personnel in tactical gear. His ID badge identified him as Range Security, but his bearing suggested much more extensive training. "All civilian personnel are to remain where they are," he continued. "Military liaisons, please prepare to verify your credentials and authorization levels." Lieutenant Nash stepped forward. "Sir, I believe we have a situation involving classified personnel. I initiated an identity verification protocol that may have triggered this response." The security lead nodded once. "That's correct, Lieutenant. Your query flagged a priority alpha alert. We have a response team inbound. ETA 3 minutes. Aurelia's expression remained neutral, but her eyes darted to the cleaning cart she had abandoned earlier. The security lead noticed, his hand moving subtly toward his sidearm. "Ma'am, I need you to stay where you are," he said calmly, "for everyone's safety." "Whose safety are you concerned with?" Aurelia asked, her voice deadly quiet. "Because right now, I'm the one surrounded by armed men in a sealed room." Nash raised his hands in a placating gesture. "No one here wants this to escalate. If you are Captain Frost, then we're on the same side." "Are we?" Aurelia's eyes narrowed. "The last time I trusted that line, my entire team died." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Nash's expression shifted from suspicion to something approaching understanding. "Operation Blackstone," he said softly. "The official report claimed your team was killed in an ambush. Enemy action. Is that what they told you?" Aurelia asked, a bitter edge creeping into her voice. Before Nash could respond, the distant sound of helicopter rotors became audible, growing louder by the second. The security lead touched his earpiece, listening to an incoming transmission. "Response team is landing now," he announced. "Everyone maintain positions." Dominic, who had been watching the exchange with growing agitation, finally lost his patience. "Will someone please tell me what the hell is going on? Who is this woman?" "That's what we're all trying to figure out," Nash replied, his eyes never leaving Aurelia. The helicopter sounds grew louder, then abruptly cut off as the aircraft landed on the facility's roof. Heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway beyond the administration area. The security personnel stood at attention as the door swung open. 2 more tactical team members entered first, scanning the room with professional efficiency. They were followed by a tall, distinguished man in his early 60s wearing full military dress uniform, adorned with the insignia of a colonel. His silver hair was cut military short, and deep lines etched his weathered face, speaking of decades of service and command. "Room secure, Colonel Wexler," one of the tactical team announced. The colonel surveyed the scene before him, his gaze eventually settling on Aurelia. The room fell into expectant silence. "At ease, gentlemen," Wexler said, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. He approached. Aurelia slowly, studying her face with an intensity that seemed to peel away layers. For her part, Aurelia stood perfectly still, her eyes calculating distances to exits, measuring angles, assessing threats, her mind clearly running combat scenarios even as her body projected calm. 4 years, Wexler said finally, circling her like a scientist examining a rare specimen. 4 years of searching. We deployed every resource at our disposal. Facial recognition failed. DNA analysis failed. And yet, Lieutenant Nash identified you in 10 minutes because of how you hold a rifle. A hint of grudging admiration colored his tone. Aurelia said nothing, but her eyes tracked his movement with predatory focus. "For those unaware," Wexler addressed the room at large, "you are in the presence of Captain Aurelia Frost, call sign Shade, former commander of Ghost Team Epsilon, the most successful covert sniper unit in military history." Dominic's jaw physically dropped, the rifle in his hand suddenly forgotten. "That's impossible. Captain Frost died in Operation Blackstone. It was all over the military channels. The whole team was lost." "That was the official story," Wexler confirmed with a curt nod. "Necessary at the time." The colonel turned back to Aurelia. "Captain Frost and her team discovered evidence of illegal weapon sales orchestrated by high-ranking officials within our own command structure. Before she could report her findings through proper channels, her team was betrayed. She was the sole survivor." The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the room. The military liaisons exchanged uneasy glances, while Dominic looked like he might be ill. Aurelia finally spoke, her voice hard as tempered steel. "You declared us dead while those responsible received promotions. Jenkins, Ramirez, Okoye, Chang, all of them. Their families were told they died heroes, when in reality, they were murdered by the very system they swore to protect." Her words carried such raw emotion that even the tactical team members shifted uncomfortably. "Politics," Wexler acknowledged grimly. "The corruption went higher than anyone initially suspected. The investigation had to proceed with extreme caution." "Investigation?" Aurelia's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Is that what you call 4 years of nothing, while I buried my team alone in unmarked graves?" The admission sent another shock wave through the room. Nash looked physically pained by the revelation. "Things have changed," Wexler said firmly. "The officials involved have been identified and investigated. Evidence you collected has been verified by independent sources. The investigation is now in its final stages." He reached into his jacket, removing a small velvet box. When he opened it, a Medal of Honor gleamed inside, its blue ribbon perfectly arranged. 3 days ago, the president signed the order," Wexler continued, his voice cracking slightly. "Posthumously, we thought." He held the medal out toward Aurelia. "Your team has been exonerated. Their families will receive full benefits and recognition for their sacrifice. Their names will be added to the memorial wall at Arlington." The room fell into a profound silence. Even Dominic appeared humbled by the gravity of the moment, carefully placing the rifle back on the bench as if suddenly aware of his own insignificance in the unfolding drama. Lieutenant Nash stepped forward from the group of military liaisons. He came to attention and delivered a perfect salute. "It was your shot pattern, Captain," he said, respect evident in every syllable. "They showed it to us in advanced training. The Frost Pentagon. 5 shots, perfectly equidistant. They said no one else could execute it with that level of precision. It was part of our coursework on legendary operators." One by one, the other military personnel in the room rose and saluted. The security guards, the tactical team. Finally, even Dominic, awkwardly mirroring their movements, clearly unfamiliar with the proper form, but compelled to show respect. Aurelia didn't return the salute immediately. Her eyes continued to scan the room. Years of distrust and survival instinct couldn't be erased by a single moment of validation, no matter how official. "The men who gave the order?" she asked Wexler, ignoring the salutes. "The ones who sent my team into that warehouse knowing it was a trap?" "3 are in military custody awaiting trial," Wexler replied. 2 more are under surveillance, building the case against their superiors. Your testimony would ensure justice is served completely." Aurelia's expression remained guarded. "And I'm supposed to trust the same system that betrayed us once already?" "Not the system," Wexler corrected. "Me. I give you my word, Captain, as a soldier, as a man who lost friends to the same corruption. This goes all the way now, no matter who falls." For a long moment, Aurelia stood motionless, weighing his words against 4 years of hiding, of carrying the burden of her fallen team alone. Finally, she reached for the rifle she'd set down earlier. Every man in the room tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But Aurelia simply checked the chamber, ensuring it was clear, and placed it properly in the rack with professional precision. Then, with perfect military form, she returned their salutes. The tension in the room dissipated like morning fog under sunlight. Wexler's weathered face broke into the first genuine smile since his arrival. "Welcome back, Captain," he said softly. Nash lowered his salute, his expression one of profound respect, tinged with lingering questions. "Sir," he addressed Wexler, "how did Captain Frost evade detection for so long? Our intelligence assets are supposedly the best in the world." Wexler glanced at Aurelia, seeking permission to answer. She gave a small nod. "Captain Frost was Ghost Team Epsilon's commander for a reason, Lieutenant," Wexler explained. "Before the program was declassified to even our own military, her team specialized in deep cover operations. They were trained to become invisible even to our own surveillance systems." Dominic, still struggling to reconcile the quiet janitor with the legendary military operator, found his voice. "She's been working here for almost 2 years. I did a background check. Everything came back clean." "I'm sure it did," Wexler said with a hint of amusement. "The captain could probably teach our identity fabrication division a few things about creating foolproof covers." Aurelia's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Cleaning staff are invisible. People look through you, not at you. It's the perfect cover for observation." One of the military liaisons, who had remained silent throughout the revelation, stepped forward. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" Wexler nodded. "If what you're saying is true, then Captain Frost has been a victim of the highest form of betrayal our military can commit against its own. How do we make this right?" Wexler sighed heavily, the weight of the question evident in his posture. "That process has already begun. Full restoration of rank and privileges, commendations for her entire team, financial compensation for the families. But some wounds can't be healed with medals and money." He turned back to Aurelia. "What we need now is your help to finish what your team started. The evidence you gathered was only the beginning. We've traced the weapons network to sources that threaten national security at the highest levels, but we're missing key pieces that only you might know." Aurelia's expression remained carefully neutral. "I'll need guarantees, not for me, but for the families of my team." "Anything," Wexler agreed immediately. "And I want to be the one who tells them the truth," she added, a hint of emotion finally cracking through her composed exterior. "They deserve to hear it from someone who was there, someone who knew their loved ones as more than just names in a classified report." Wexler nodded solemnly. "Of course. We can arrange secure transport to begin tomorrow." Aurelia glanced around the firing range, the place that had been her sanctuary and prison for nearly 2 years. Her gaze lingered on the cleaning cart, the mop, the mundane tools that had been part of her cover identity for so long. "I need time," she said finally, "to process this, to transition back." "Understood," Wexler replied. Lieutenant Nash will remain as your liaison. His security clearance has been upgraded to accommodate this situation. The facility will remain under secure protocol until further notice. He turned to address the room at large. What happened here today is classified at the highest level. None of you are to discuss it outside this room. Proper non-disclosure documentation will be provided before you leave. The colonel then focused on Dominic, who was still trying to process the revelation that his janitor was actually a military legend. Mr. Thorne, your cooperation is appreciated. Your facility will be compensated for any disruption. Dominic nodded numbly, clearly struggling to find appropriate words for the situation. As the tactical team began organizing the logistics of securing the facility, Aurelia moved away from the center of attention. She walked to the window, where the metal shutters had partially retracted, looking out at the everyday world, continuing oblivious to the drama unfolding inside. Lieutenant Nash approached cautiously, maintaining a respectful distance. Captain, he began tentatively, I owe you an apology. The way we treated you earlier was unacceptable. Aurelia didn't turn from the window. You were following your training, identifying potential security anomalies. That's no excuse for disrespect, Nash insisted, especially to an officer of your standing. Now she did turn, studying him with penetrating intensity. What do you know about me, Lieutenant, beyond what they teach in training courses? Nash hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I know your unit had the highest success rate in covert operations history. I know you personally hold the record for longest confirmed elimination shot in combat conditions. I know that before Operation Blackstone, you were on track to become the youngest colonel in special operations history. A flicker of something, pain perhaps, crossed Aurelia's face. That was a different life, a different person. With all due respect, ma'am, I don't believe that, Nash said quietly. The way you handled that rifle today, that doesn't go away. That kind of precision is bone deep. Aurelia's gaze drifted to the targeting system, which still displayed her perfect pentagon pattern. Sometimes I wish it would. Her words hung between them, heavy with unspoken trauma. Nash sensed the boundary and respectfully withdrew, moving to assist with the security protocols being established. Across the room, Colonel Wexler was engaged in intense conversation with his tactical team, occasionally glancing toward Aurelia. His expression was difficult to read, relief mixed with concern, perhaps even a hint of apprehension. Dominic approached Aurelia cautiously, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. He seemed to be struggling to find words. I want to apologize, he finally managed. The things I said earlier, if I had known, you wouldn't have said them? Aurelia finished for him, her tone neutral. That's the problem, isn't it? Respect shouldn't depend on rank or reputation. Dominic flushed with embarrassment. You're right, I was out of line. Aurelia studied him for a moment, then nodded once in acknowledgement of his apology. Your shooting form isn't bad, but you tend to anticipate recoil on your third shot. That's why your groupings always spread slightly to the left. Dominic blinked in surprise at the professional assessment. Thank you. I'll work on that. An awkward silence fell between them. Dominic gestured, vaguely toward the facility at large. So, what happens now? With the range, I mean? That depends on a lot of factors beyond my control, Aurelia replied. But if I were you, I'd prepare for some changes. Before Dominic could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began flashing, and the metal shutters that had partially retracted suddenly slammed back down. Perimeter breach! One of the tactical team shouted. East sector! Colonel Wexler immediately moved to Aurelia's position. We need to move you to a secure location, now. Aurelia's posture shifted instantly to combat readiness. What's happening? Uncertain, Wexler replied tersely. But we have unauthorized vehicles approaching rapidly from multiple directions. Lieutenant Nash joined them, his hand on his sidearm. Sir, could this be related to the investigation? A leak? Wexler's expression darkened. It's possible. We need to assume hostile intent until proven otherwise. Aurelia's eyes narrowed. Or it could be that not everyone in your command chain is as committed to justice as you are, Colonel. The implication hung in the air between them. The possibility that elements within their own military might still be working to ensure Captain Frost and her evidence never reached a courtroom. The tactical team was moving with practiced efficiency. securing doors and taking defensive positions. The military liaisons, all clearly combat-trained themselves, moved to assist without being asked. "We have a secure extraction point on the roof," Wexler told Aurelia. "Helicopter is standing by." Aurelia shook her head. "Too exposed. If they have anti-aircraft capabilities, we'd be an easy target." She moved quickly to her cleaning cart, reaching beneath it to reveal a hidden compartment. From it, she extracted a small device that looked like a maintenance remote. "Secondary exit," she explained, moving toward what appeared to be a solid wall near the back of the range. "I never rely on just one way out." She pressed a sequence on the device, and a previously invisible seam appeared in the wall. A narrow passage opened, revealing a dark corridor beyond. "Maintenance tunnel," she explained, "runs beneath the entire facility, connects to the storm drainage system half a mile east." Wexler looked impressed, despite the urgency of the situation. "You've been prepared for this possibility all along." "I've been prepared for every possibility," Aurelia corrected. "That's how I stayed alive this long." The sounds of conflict erupted from the direction of the main entrance. Gunfire, shouted commands, the unmistakable noise of breaching charges. "They're inside the building," one of the tactical team reported. "Multiple hostiles, heavily armed." Wexler made a split-second decision. "Captain Frost and I will take the escape tunnel. Lieutenant Nash, you're with us. The rest of you, create a diversion at the main entrance and the roof. Make them think we're attempting a BEC standard extraction." As the team moved to execute their orders, Aurelia caught Dominic's arm. "There's a weapons cache in my maintenance locker. Code is 7392. Share it with the defensive team." Dominic nodded, newfound respect evident in his eyes. "Stay safe, Captain." Aurelia, Nash, and Colonel Wexler moved quickly to the hidden passage. As they entered the dark corridor, Aurelia paused at the threshold, looking back at the firing range that had been her cover and her prison for nearly 2 years. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Captain," Nash said quietly beside her. Aurelia's expression hardened with resolve. "I'm not looking for anything, Lieutenant. I'm hunting. And after 4 years of waiting, my targets are finally in the open." She pressed another sequence on her device, and the hidden door slid closed behind them, sealing them in darkness as the sounds of combat intensified beyond the wall. Have you ever had to hide who you truly were, only to have your past find you when you least expected it? Or have you witnessed someone reveal hidden depths that changed how you saw them forever? The masks we wear and the truths we conceal shape our stories in ways we can never fully predict. If this resonates with your own experiences, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to join our community of storytellers. The maintenance tunnel was pitch black, save for the narrow beam of light from Aurelia's tactical flashlight. The air was heavy with the smell of damp concrete and stagnant water. Their footsteps echoed against the stone walls as they moved swiftly through the darkness, Aurelia leading with the confident steps of someone who had memorized every inch of the passage. "How long have you had this escape route planned?" Lieutenant Nash asked, his voice hushed despite the thick concrete walls separating them from their pursuers. "Since my 3rd day working at the facility," Aurelia replied, without breaking stride. "Always have an exit strategy, first rule of survival." Colonel Wexler followed closely behind them, his breathing slightly labored, but his movements still precise. "Captain, once we reach the drainage outlet, we'll have a tactical team waiting 2 clicks east. Secure transport to a safe house where we can debrief properly." Aurelia's light briefly illuminated a junction in the tunnel. She turned right without hesitation. "With all due respect, Colonel, I'm not going to any location prearranged by your people. Not until I know exactly who's hunting us." "You still don't trust me," Wexler stated. It wasn't a question. "I trust your intentions," Aurelia clarified. "I don't trust your security protocols. Someone knew I was here. Someone mobilized a strike team within minutes of my identity being confirmed. That speaks to high-level access and real-time surveillance." Nash glanced back toward the way they had come. "She's right, sir. That response was too fast, too coordinated. They were waiting for a trigger." The Colonel fell silent, processing this information. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant drip of water echoing through the tunnel system. After several more minutes of navigation through the labyrinthine passages, Aurelia slowed her pace. "Drainage outlet ahead. We'll be exposed for approximately 12 seconds while we cross to the tree line." She extinguished her light, allowing their eyes to adjust to the darkness. A faint glow of daylight was visible at the end of the tunnel, a circular opening partially obscured by overgrown vegetation. "I'll go first," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Scout the perimeter. If it's clear, I'll signal. If not, stay put and wait for my command." Before either man could protest, Aurelia moved forward with the silent grace of a predator. She reached the tunnel opening and paused, scanning the area beyond with methodical precision. The drainage outlet opened onto a shallow ravine bordered by dense woods, perfect cover for a tactical approach or an ambush. After a tense minute of observation, she turned back to Nash and Wexler. "Clear for now, but we need to move quickly. Helicopter sounds approaching from the west." They emerged from the tunnel into the ravine, immediately moving toward the cover of the trees. The sound of rotors grew louder, and through breaks in the canopy, they could see a military helicopter circling the area of the firing range approximately half a mile behind them. "Not one of ours," Wexler muttered, his expression grim. "That's a private contractor model." Once they reached the relative safety of the dense forest, Aurelia paused to get her bearings. Her entire demeanor had transformed. Gone was any trace of the deferential janitor. In her place stood a combat operator of the highest caliber, every movement economical, every decision tactical. "I have a secure location 3 miles northeast," she said, pointing deeper into the woods. "Off-grid, no digital footprint. We can regroup there and establish next steps." Nash checked his sidearm, ensuring it was ready if needed. "What about the team back at the range? They're holding position to cover our escape." A shadow crossed Aurelia's face. "Your men are trained operators. They'll create maximum disruption, then disperse through secondary exits. Standard protocol." "And if they're captured?" Wexler asked. "They know nothing of value," Aurelia replied. "Only that I exist. That information is already compromised." They moved through the forest with as much speed as the terrain allowed. Aurelia set a punishing pace, navigating by landmarks only she seemed to recognize. Occasionally she would stop, listen intently, then adjust their course slightly. After nearly an hour of travel, they reached a small clearing. In it stood a modest cabin that appeared weathered and abandoned. No vehicle was visible, no path led to its door, and vegetation had been allowed to grow naturally around it, concealing it from aerial observation. Aurelia approached cautiously, retrieving a key from beneath a specific rock that looked identical to dozens of others scattered around the clearing. "Wait here," she instructed, before moving to secure the perimeter. Once satisfied, she signaled for them to approach. The interior of the cabin was Spartan but functional, a small kitchen area, basic furniture, and most notably, a wall covered in maps, photographs, and documents connected by red strings. A tactical planning center hidden in plain sight. "Welcome to my war room," Aurelia said, closing and securing the door behind them. "Everything I've gathered over the past 4 years is here. Evidence, connections, targets." Wexler approached the wall, studying the intricate web of information with growing astonishment. "This is comprehensive, more than our entire intelligence division compiled." "I had motivation," Aurelia replied flatly. "They were my team, my family." She moved to what appeared to be a simple cabinet, pressed a concealed switch, and revealed a hidden arsenal of weapons and communication equipment. "Satellite phone," she said, handing the device to Wexler. "Secure line. You can contact your trusted personnel, but choose wisely." The colonel nodded, moving to a corner of the cabin to make his call. Nash remained near the door, positioned to monitor approaches while still able to observe the interior. "How long have you maintained this place?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "Established it 18 months ago," Aurelia answered, checking equipment with practiced efficiency. "One of 3 fallback positions I've prepared in the region." "All while working as a janitor," Nash said, unable to keep a note of admiration from his tone. "Hiding in plain sight." Aurelia paused, something unreadable flickering across her features. It wasn't just tactical. The routine, it helped. After what happened, the simplicity of it. Clean things up, make order from chaos. There's a certain peace in that. It was the most personal statement she had made since her identity was revealed, and Nash recognized it as such, responding with a respectful nod rather than pressing further. Wexler rejoined them, his expression grave but determined. "I've activated my most trusted team. They'll establish a secure perimeter around this location within the hour. We've also identified the private military contractors who breached the firing range. Black River Operations. Aurelia's head snapped up. Black River, they were the middlemen for the weapons transfers my team tracked, the same ones who set up the ambush at the warehouse. Exactly, Wexler confirmed grimly, which confirms your suspicion. Someone high up the chain is still protecting those weapons deals. Nash moved away from the window. What's our next move, sir? Wexler looked to Aurelia. This is Captain Frost's operation now. She has the intelligence, the experience, and, frankly, the most at stake. Aurelia studied the wall of evidence, her eyes tracing the connections she had spent years establishing. We need to go public, controlled disclosure to multiple secure channels simultaneously. Too big to bury, too widespread to contain. She pointed to a particular photograph on the wall, a distinguished-looking man in military dress uniform with general's stars. General Marcus Harrington. He authorized the weapons transfers, redirected military-grade armaments to restricted markets through Black River as the intermediary. When my team uncovered the operation, he personally signed the order sending us into that warehouse. Wexler's expression darkened. Harrington has been promoted since then. He's now on the Joint Chiefs Advisory Board with Level 10 security clearance. Which explains how our position was compromised so quickly, Nash added, the pieces falling into place. He would have access to all identification protocols, including Lieutenant Nash's query to the database. Aurelia nodded, a cold determination settling over her features. In 3 days, Harrington is scheduled to speak at the Military Service Recognition Ceremony at Arlington. Every major military branch will have representatives present, along with civilian oversight committees and press. You want to confront him publicly, Wexler realized, concern evident in his voice. Not confront, Aurelia corrected. Expose, with irrefutable evidence in front of witnesses too numerous and too powerful to silence. Nash looked skeptical. The security at that event will be impenetrable, and you're still officially dead, Captain. Your appearance alone would create chaos. A ghost of a smile touched Aurelia's lips. Chaos is exactly what we need. Controlled, directed chaos that forces the truth into the open where it can't be buried again. She moved to another section of her evidence wall, revealing detailed security protocols for the upcoming ceremony. I've been planning this moment for 4 years, gentlemen, ever since I buried my team in unmarked graves while Harrington received his promotion and commendation. Wexler studied the plans, professional assessment warring with moral certainty on his weathered face. Finally, he nodded. We'll need additional resources, trustworthy personnel only. I know just who to call, Aurelia replied, reaching for the satellite phone. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of intensive preparation. Wexler's trusted team established security around the cabin, while Aurelia, Nash, and the colonel refined their strategy. Additional personnel arrived in small groups, all personally vetted by Wexler, all shocked to discover Captain Frost alive, all committed to exposing the truth. By the morning of the ceremony, everything was in place. Aurelia stood in the cabin's small bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Gone was the plain janitor's uniform, replaced by her full military dress uniform, meticulously preserved for this moment. The insignia of Ghost. Team Epsilon gleamed on her collar, her captain's bars polished to perfection. Medals she had earned through years of distinguished service were arranged precisely on her chest. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Captain?" Nash's voice called. "Transport is ready." Aurelia took one last look at herself. Not the janitor, not the ghost, but the soldier she had always been. On my way. The journey to Arlington was tense but uneventful. Their convoy, disguised as routine military transport, encountered no resistance. Security protocols for the ceremony worked in their favor. With so many military branches represented, the additional vehicles raised no alarms. As they approached the ceremonial grounds, Aurelia reviewed the operation one final time with her team. Remember, timing is everything. Nash, your team secures the perimeter exits. Colonel Wexler will approach the podium during the recognition segment. I remain concealed until the signal. The evidence package goes live to all media outlets simultaneously at exactly 14:30. The grounds of Arlington National Cemetery were solemn and beautiful under the clear autumn sky. Rows of white headstones stretched into the distance, a stark reminder of sacrifice. The ceremony was being held in the Memorial Amphitheater, where hundreds of military personnel, government officials, and family members of fallen soldiers had gathered. From her concealed position, Aurelia could see General Harrington seated prominently on the stage, his chest decorated with medals, his expression solemn and respectful. The sight of him sent a wave of cold fury through her veins, but she channeled it, transformed it into focus. The ceremony proceeded according to protocol. Speeches about valor and sacrifice, recognition of distinguished service, memorial acknowledgments for those lost in service to their country. When Colonel Wexler was introduced to present a special commendation, Aurelia tensed, ready. This was the moment everything would change. Wexler approached the podium with measured steps, his bearing impeccable. "Thank you, distinguished guests, for this opportunity to address you on this solemn occasion. Today, I am here not only to honor those whose names are inscribed in stone, but also to right a grievous wrong that has remained buried for too long." A murmur ran through the audience. This was not the expected speech. 4 years ago, Wexler continued, his voice carrying across the hushed amphitheater, Ghost Team Epsilon, one of our most decorated special operations units, was reportedly killed in action during Operation Blackstone. They were honored as heroes who died serving their country. General Harrington shifted uncomfortably in his seat, eyes narrowing as he watched Wexler. What was not reported, Wexler pressed on, was that Operation Blackstone was compromised from within. Ghost Team Epsilon had uncovered evidence of illegal weapons sales orchestrated by high-ranking officials within our own command structure. They were not killed by enemy action. They were betrayed by the very institution they served. Gasps and murmurs swelled through the crowd. Security personnel began moving toward the stage, but Nash's team intercepted them, displaying official authorization that momentarily confused the situation. "These brave soldiers," Wexler continued, undeterred, Sergeants Jenkins, Ramirez, Okoye, and Chong gave their lives not in combat with a foreign enemy, but as casualties of corruption within our ranks. Their families were denied the truth. Their sacrifices were buried under classified reports and convenient narratives. General Harrington was on his feet now, his face flushed with anger. He gestured urgently to his aides, who began moving toward Wexler. "But there was a survivor," Wexler announced, his voice rising above the growing commotion. "One officer who escaped the ambush, who gathered evidence, who has waited for this day to ensure justice for her fallen team." This was the signal. Aurelia emerged from her concealed position, walking with measured, deliberate steps down the center aisle of the amphitheater. In her full-dress uniform, medals gleaming in the sunlight, she was the embodiment of military bearing and resolve. A hush fell over the crowd as she approached the stage. Many of the senior officers present recognized her immediately. The legendary Captain Frost, reportedly killed in action years ago, now walking among them like a ghost made flesh. "Ladies and gentlemen," Wexler announced, "Captain Aurelia Frost, commanding officer of Ghost Team Epsilon." Aurelia ascended the steps to the stage, coming face to face with General Harrington, who had gone deathly pale. "This is outrageous," Harrington sputtered, attempting to regain control. "This woman is an imposter. Captain Frost died in Operation Blackstone. This is a disgraceful publicity stunt." "I assure you, General," Aurelia replied, her voice carrying to every corner of the now silent amphitheater, "I am very much alive, unlike my team, who were sent to their deaths on your direct order." She turned to address the assembled crowd. At this moment, every major news outlet, Congressional Oversight Committee, and Military Justice Department is receiving a comprehensive evidence package. It contains classified communications, financial records, and operational details that prove beyond any doubt that General Harrington authorized the sale of military weapons to prohibited entities. When my team discovered this, he personally signed the order, sending us into a known trap. On cue, phones began buzzing and chiming throughout the audience as the evidence went live across multiple platforms simultaneously. "This is absurd," Harrington protested, but his voice had lost its authority. "These allegations are baseless. This woman has no proof." "The proof is irrefutable, General," Colonel Wexler interjected. "Financial transfers through Black River operations, communication logs, your personal authorization codes on the deployment orders for Ghost Team Epsilon, overriding standard security protocols." As Harrington continued to protest, military police approached the stage. For a tense moment, it was unclear whether they were there for Aurelia or the general. General Marcus Harrington, the lead MP, announced formally, "You are hereby detained pending investigation into charges of treason, conspiracy, and the unlawful deaths of United States military personnel. Please surrender your sidearm and come with us." The amphitheater erupted in shocked conversations and exclamations. Cameras flashed as journalists captured the historic moment. Harrington, ashen-faced and defeated, was escorted from the stage in full view of the military community he had betrayed. In the chaos that followed, families of the fallen Ghost Team members were escorted to a private area where Aurelia waited to personally tell them the truth about their loved one's sacrifice. It was the hardest conversation of her life, but one she had prepared for since the day she buried her teammates. The aftermath unfolded over the following months. A comprehensive investigation exposed the full extent of the corruption. Additional arrests were made. The families of Ghost Team Epsilon received formal apologies from the highest levels of government, along with the full benefits and recognition they had been denied. And Precision Point, the firing range where Aurelia had hidden in plain sight, underwent a transformation of its own. 6 months after the Arlington revelation, the facility reopened under a new name, the Frost Tactical Training Center. The main building had been expanded and renovated, now featuring state-of-the-art training facilities and a dedicated memorial wall. On the wall hung photographs of Ghost Team Epsilon, Sergeants Jenkins, Ramirez, Okoye, and Chong, their faces solemn in their official portraits. Beneath each photo were their names, ranks, and the words, "Vindicated in Truth." Aurelia, now dressed in tactical instructor gear rather than a janitor's uniform, led a diverse group of recruits through the main training area. Men and women from various branches of service listened intently as she demonstrated advanced techniques. "Precision isn't about strength," she explained, her voice confident, no longer hidden. "It's about patience, calculation, respect for variables you cannot control." She adjusted a recruit's stance slightly, guiding rather than criticizing. "Your body should be an extension of your mind, calm center, clear purpose." Among her students was Lieutenant Nash, now assigned to her special training unit. In the observation room above the range, Colonel Wexler watched alongside several high-ranking officials who had come to witness the innovative training program. Dominic Thorne entered the observation room, noticeably humbler than he had been 6 months earlier. In his hands was a plaque, his old shooting, record that had once hung proudly by the entrance. "Where should I put this?" he asked Wexler quietly. "Doesn't seem right to display it anymore." Wexler considered the question thoughtfully. "Ask the captain. It's her facility now." On the range below, Aurelia demonstrated a particularly difficult shot for her students. Perfect bullseye, as always. The recruits applauded, respect evident in their expressions. As the training session concluded, Dominic approached Aurelia cautiously. The dynamic between them had fundamentally changed, the arrogant instructor and invisible janitor replaced by two professionals finding a new equilibrium. "Captain Frost," he began, his tone respectful where once it had been dismissive, "I wanted to apologize again for how I treated you. I was arrogant and worse." Aurelia studied him for a moment, then nodded once. Apology accepted. He offered her the plaque he had been carrying. "This belongs to you now. Your record surpassed mine long ago." She took the plaque, studied it briefly, then handed it back. "Keep it. Records are meant to be broken. Just make sure the next one is earned through respect, not arrogance." Dominic nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. "I'm learning, slowly maybe, but learning." "That's all any of us can do," Aurelia replied, a hint of warmth finally showing through her professional demeanor. As the facility cleared out for the day, Aurelia remained on the range alone. The space that had once been her cover now served a greater purpose, training a new generation of operators with an emphasis on ethics as well as accuracy. She loaded a single round into a rifle, took aim at the farthest target. Before firing, she glanced at the memorial wall, a silent acknowledgement to her fallen team. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. Justice had been served. Truth had prevailed. She fired. Perfect shot. The sun was setting as Aurelia completed her final checks of the facility. As she walked toward the exit, she passed the spot where, months ago, she had stood with a mop in hand. invisible to those around her. Now, recruits and colleagues nodded respectfully as she passed. At the main entrance, a new sign had been installed. It read, "Precision Point, where excellence is measured by character, not gender." Aurelia paused for a moment, reading the words. A slight smile formed on her lips as she pushed through the doors into the evening air. The weight she had carried for 4 long years felt lighter now. Not gone. She would always carry her team with her, but transformed into purpose rather than pain. The facility behind her was no longer a hiding place, but a legacy, a testament to the truth that had finally come to light. And as the doors closed behind her, Aurelia Frost, soldier, survivor, teacher, walked forward into the future she had fought so hard to secure. Sometimes the most extraordinary heroes walk among us unrecognized, their greatest battles fought in silence, their deepest strengths hidden beneath ordinary exteriors. Have you ever discovered unexpected courage or talent in someone you had underestimated? Or perhaps you've had to conceal your own true abilities while waiting for the right moment to reveal them. The journey from invisibility to recognition can transform not just one life, but many. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to join a community that celebrates the hidden heroes among us.